Savant Group. This is my associate Derek Lee. We are the registered investment advisors on your account. This is a great time to get together and talk. When I was here probably about 5 months ago, the market was just starting its severe volatility, where we thought it was severe until we got to September and October, and then things just got absolutely out of control. So what we're looking at right now is almost kind of the perfect storm of the financial world, where we've had three elements. We've had equities, we've had bonds, and we've had money market funds that have all been put through the ringer. The first case with equities, we had Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, where they're filing for bankruptcy. Everybody's panicking. They're saying, I need to switch to bonds. Literally within, days of Lehman Brothers filing for bankruptcy protection, we have AIG, which is an insurance provider. They insure credit default swaps, which is a $1 trillion section of the market. AIG suddenly was looking like they were going to file for bankruptcy. The difference between what happened with Lehman Brothers and AIG is, with Lehman Brothers, the federal government did not step in. They said, you saw what happened with Bear Stearns, you knew there were alternatives for you, you didn't elect to take them, therefore you're going to have to take your lumps. In the case of AIG, because they were an insurer, they realized that there were literally trillions of dollars that were tied up in insurance protected, credit default swaps, that if they didn't step in with AIG, there could be just kind of a financial Armageddon of all of these things unwinding. So the government had to step in, and it helped out the bond sector. But what happened is, again, there was insecurity in the bond sector, so returns are dropping now for bonds. Now, within a week of all of this happening, we have the third part of this perfect storm. We now have Reserve Primary, which is the very first money market fund that ever occurred in the United States. It broke a buck, and what that means is when people put $1 in a money market fund, they expect that they'll at least be able to pull $1 out of it. Well, when it broke a buck, suddenly it's 99 cents on the dollar, 98 cents, 97 cents, and people made a run on the bank. And they pulled out 50% of the value of the fund in 2 days before they basically restricted access to the fund, and really didn't allow people to pull their money out now for a period of 1 year, is what happened. So now we have equities, bonds, money market accounts that have all experienced this traumatic stress. What's going to happen? Well, what will happen is that we're going to get into the performance overview, which I touched on. We're going to get into some Russell fund name changes, and then we're going to talk about specifically your portfolio. But so much has happened recently, whoops, I went too far, that I've had to, in your handouts, I've had to give you kind of a snapshot chronologically of all the stuff that's happened, and this doesn't include everything. This was just the highlights of the bad news for what's going on between the financial sector. Now, the good news is there's been many, many governmental reactions that have been good. The first time the bailout package, as it was called at the time, was presented to Congress, they turned it down. $700 billion. It was something that was felt by the market. It was required in order to be able to get people out of debt. And at the time, they were really earmarking this for toxic debt in banks, troubled assets that the federal government could take in, purchase, and free up credit for the banks to be able to loan out to companies and to individuals. Well, when Congress rejected that in September, that started this huge decline for September and October to be the 2 worst months on record ever since they've been tracking the market. So the market lost all confidence in the ability for the federal government to step in and assist and help. So it took, I think, roughly a week and a half after Congress rejected the first pass for the $700 billion bailout package. They retitled it the Rescue Plan and TARP, Troubled Asset Relief Program, or Rescue Program, and suddenly it's now worth $850 billion, and it passes Congress, Senate, and then the President signs it into law. However, it didn't matter. The market, as far as they were concerned, the damage had been done, confidence was lost, and the fact that we had this $850 billion bailout package, the market realized it was going to take time for this to be interjected into the economy, and we didn't have time. So as a result, September 29th was the single worst day, point-wise, in terms of what we lost in the market. We've had October that finished out with atrocious days where single-day losses equaled prior year losses. And then really where it puts us now is we're in a position where the negative returns of 2000, 2001, and 2002 now roughly equal what we're facing for 2008. That's why people have been so on edge. There's a second component that gets into this, and it's tied to what you guys do, the housing market. And what's happened is that the housing market is what really kind of started this whole thing going with subprime. At the time, we understood that subprime made up 5% of the total fixed income component of everything that was going on within the bond market. What we didn't understand at the time, and the market didn't understand this, is that that 5% had been so sliced and diced that it was interjected in almost every facet of banking, where people, through derivatives and through these credit default swaps, had some exposure if they were involved in subprime. So when subprime started going south, and you have these foreclosures that are happening within the different areas, of which Sacramento is one of the hardest hit. Stockton, in the latest report, is still the #1 for foreclosures in the United States. But the point is, the housing market's what really started it about a year and a half ago. So what do we have? We have declining home and mortgage rates going down. What that does is it triggers tighter lending standards, which, by the way, should have been in place to start with. There shouldn't have been subprime debt going out there the way that it was with no paperwork. Because of this higher margin requirements, what's happening now is that you've got hedge funds that are borrowing heavily from these banks. They're having to sell billions of dollars in bonds to make their margin calls because those hedge fund values are dropping. When the value drops, the ratio that they have in debt against those actually goes up. And if they don't want to have to pay 100% of their loan, they have to sell these bonds. What that's done is it's created a real challenge for the market in that we have a situation where bonds tend to track negatively correlated to equities. In this particular market, we saw a period in October where bonds were going down and tracking negatively with stocks. And that creates real panic for people that are trying to diversify their portfolios and have more of an equity, or excuse me, less of an equity component and more of a fixed income component. Suddenly we saw people that are saying, you know what, I'm experiencing losses all the way around. Where can I go? What can I do? The only thing that I can offer right now is we need to take the long-range view. Right now, things are very, very grim. There's a lot of negativity in the market. There is a lack of confidence in a lot of the financial organizations that we're going to be able to pull out of this very quickly. So as a result, what they've done is they've kind of set up what it will most likely look like for next year. Now understand that economists vary in their opinions, but they took 50 of the leading economists and tried to get a snapshot for what could happen next year. And what they agreed on is that the first quarter of 2009 will probably be just as volatile as what we've gone through. Doesn't mean we're going to break a new bottom and go past 7,500 in the Dow. What it means is we're going to be up, down, up, down. There's not going to be security in the market. So my advice to you is take that quarterly statement, just file it away so you don't have to worry about it and there's no depressing news. However, depending on how the new President-elect Obama implements his economic stimulus plan, which by the way is his #1 priority right now, how fast he can get that going from January 20th on will determine, based on the economist, whether we start to pull out at the beginning of the second quarter or whether it's towards the end of the second quarter that we start to pull out of this. But they're all in consensus that by the end of next year, we should finish the year with lukewarm returns, single-digit positive growth that should finish on a relatively positive note. However, that's talking about 1 to 2 first quarters being somewhat painful again. Here's the volatility, your money's going into the plan, and you just see nothing really happening. The good news is that when the money's going into the plan, you're buying assets at a dramatically reduced value. And when the market turns around, those assets are going to appreciate and you're going to be in great shape. The key is the number of shares that you hold do not change. That's where people get confused because they see a 30, 40, 50% decline in the balance and they say, how am I ever going to recover from a 50% decline? It's not 50% of your shares are gone, it's 50% of the value is gone. So again, as soon as the market turns around, you're not trading those shares, you're going to be able to appreciate with the rest of the market. It's just a matter of taking a long view so that you're not selling when the market's down here and getting into money market and then getting out and getting back in when the market's back up here. You have to stay in order to be able to be there for the best days. So This is something that applies